Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to our core video. Last week, we talked about our history. We made our timeline, and maybe some of you are still working on your timeline, and that's okay. But we made a timeline, and we talked about our history, right? We talked about what was important in our lives and the important events that have happened to us, and we put that down in a piece of paper, right? We were able to see our history. We also talked about how everybody has a history. Everyone has a history. Our mom, our dad, our sibling, ourselves. Everyone has a history. Miss Santana has a history. The sisters have a history, right? Each one of the sisters, Mrs. Cruz has a history. We also talked about how not just people have histories, but countries have histories. The United States of America has a history. Europe has a history. Spain has a history. Italy has a history, right? We all have histories. And today, I want to talk to you about the story, the history, right? His story, history of the Roman people. How many of you know who the Romans are? Some of you. Some of you don't, and that's okay. If you know nothing about the Romans, it's completely fine. So let's look back at your history. What was the first important event that you put down for your history? Most of you put down your birthday, right? Most of you, your first important date in your history was the day you were born, right? How many of you put your first birthday, the day that you were born, on your timeline as your first date? Good, a lot of you did. So today we're going to talk about how the Romans started. There always has to be a beginning, and there will always be an end. A beginning and an end, right? So we're going to look at who the Romans were, how did they start, and where did they live? Okay, so in order for us to learn a little bit better about the beginning of Rome, we're going to learn about how Rome started. I'm going to ask you to take out this piece of paper. It's inside of your binder. So put pause and go get this piece of paper. So today I'm going to share with you the story of Romulus and Remus. You can take out your crayons and you can go ahead and color while I share with you this story. But it is important that you have your listening ears on and that you're able to listen. Before we begin, I want to see what you notice in the picture. There's a river, the Tiber River. There is a basket, and there are two little boys. There's a wolf, and it's a girl, so we call it a she-wolf. And there are trees. That's what we see in our picture. So I'm going to begin with our story. Okay, so you can go ahead and color if you would like, or you can go ahead and listen and then color at the end. So let us begin. Today we're going to learn about an empire, but this one was bigger and stronger than any empire we've ever seen before. It grew bigger than Alexander's empire, and it lasted much longer. In fact, it lasted for hundreds and hundreds of years. over 1,000 years after the empire fell, this empire that we're going to learn about fell, people are still learning its language, reading its books, and copying its government. This empire that we're going to learn about was called Rome. At first, Rome was just a tiny little village in the hills of Italy. Go west from Greece and you will see a land that looks just like a boot, jutting down into the Mediterranean Sea. This is called a peninsula because it sticks out into the water. This peninsula is Italy. So now our story is going to begin in Italy. And we are learning about this empire, this huge, grand empire that everyone wanted to be like. But we're going to learn its history. We're going to learn the history of Rome. We're going to go all the way to the beginning. And the beginning starts with a wolf and 2 baby boys. Let's learn about what happened and why there's a wolf and why there are 2 baby boys in a basket. The people who lived in Rome would tell this story about how Rome began. Once upon a time, a great king named Numitor had twin grandsons. This king had 2 twin grandsons. I know we have our twins in our class, Adrian and Damien, right? So this king had twin grandsons. They were strong, healthy baby boys named Romulus and Remus. But Numitor also had a wicked younger brother who plotted against him and stole the king's throne. The new evil king wanted to get rid of anyone who might claim to be the rightful king. Those babies might grow up and take my crown, he said. Go put them in the Tiber River, said the evil king. So a servant took the boys down to the Tiber River, but she felt sorry for them, and she put them into a basket and pushed them into the current. You can go ahead and color that if you'd like. The basket floated along the river until it got stuck in the root of a fig tree. The root. Remember we talked about plants, how they put roots into the ground? The root of a fig tree. The basket floated along the river until it got stuck in the root of a fig tree at the river's edge. That might have been the end of the 2 boys. They might have died. But a wolf heard them crying, and the wolf peered around the trunk of the fig tree and saw the basket with the babies in it. Now, this wolf had cubs of her own. She had little babies, the wolf. And she felt pity for the 2 hungry babies who would not stop crying. So she tugged the basket into the bank and then back to her own den. There, she raised the babies with her own wolf cubs as her own. One day, a shepherd looking out for a lost lamb heard a coo. Have you ever heard a baby coo? They go, oh, and they just move around and they coo and they kind of talk. Sometimes they cry. So one day a shepherd looking for his lost lamb heard a coo and then a gurgle from the bush surrounding the wolf's den. He pushed some branches aside and saw 2 fat, happy baby boys playing naked among the wolf cubs. The shepherd and his wife had no children of their own. So he took the boys home, and the 2 of them raised the babies to be tall, handsome young men. When Romulus and Remus were grown, they went back to the fig tree where their basket had landed so many years ago. They looked around and saw 7 hills. This is the perfect place to build a town, they said to each other. A town on top of 7 hills would be strong and hard to attack. So Romulus and Remus began to build a town. And Romulus declared himself the king of this new town. Romulus said, "I am the king." He put himself in charge of the building. He put himself in charge of building a wall around this little town. He said, "This wall will keep us safe," he declared, "and anyone who climbs over my wall will be instantly killed." But Remus was angry with his brother. So who said this? Romulus made himself the king. Romulus made himself the king. And he said, "This wall will keep us safe. But anyone who climbs this wall will be instantly killed." Romulus said that. So now his brother Remus was angry with Romulus. He thought to himself, "We built this town together. Why should Romulus be the ruler of it? I want to be the leader." So he walked up to the wall and vaulted easily over it. He jumped over it. He reared the wall. "What kind of wall is that?" he sneered. "What kind of wall is that? Anyone can climb over it. How can you keep this town safe?" Romulus was so angry that he drew his sword, charged at his brother, and killed him on the spot. Then he named the town Rome after himself. He was Rome's first king. Wow. What does this story remind you of, boys and girls? What does the story remind you of? Perhaps the story of Cain and Abel? Perhaps the story of Moses? So let us review our story really quick. So there was this good king who had 2 baby grandsons. He had 2 baby grandsons. There was a king, a great king named Numitor, and he had 2 baby grandsons. And the king, the good king, his brother came and took him out, and his brother became the king. And this brother was an evil king. And he said, "I don't want anyone taking away my kingship. I don't want anyone," Romulus and Remus, "to come and say that they're going to be the king." So he sent a servant to put them in a basket Well, no. He sent a servant to put them in the river, down the Tiber River. The king wanted to kill the baby boys. But the servant felt so sorry for the baby boys that she decided to give them a chance and put them in a basket. So the baby boys traveled down the Tiber River and reached the edge of a fig tree. And a wolf came by and saw that there were baby boys, there were babies along the edge of the river. And so the wolf had pity on them and decided to raise these little babies with his baby cubs. Can you imagine being raised by a wolf? So these babies grew up and were raised by a wolf. And one day, a shepherd was looking for his lost sheep. He found these two baby boys. They were fat and happy. And he took them back to his house, his home. And he raised them. And Romulus and Remus grew up to be strong, healthy men. And one day they decided to leave their adopted father's house. And they came back to the place where they were found by the wolf. And they said, this will be a good place to make a town, to build a city. And they saw 7 hills. How many hills did they see? 7. Maybe we can draw the hills in the background. I think that'd be great. 1 hill, 2 hills, 3 hills, 4 hills, 5 hills, 6 hills, 7 hills. There we go. 7 hills. And the boys said this will be a great place to build a town. And they did. They started building a town. And Romulus said, I am going to be the leader. I'm going to be the one in charge. And he said, and I'm going to build a wall to keep us safe from other people. Because back then they didn't have police. It was just him and Romulus. They didn't have any police. They didn't have anyone to protect them. So they said, we're going to build a wall. But Remus was so mad at his brother because he said, why should he be the leader? I want to be the leader. It's not fair, he said. But Romulus had said, if anyone jumps my wall, I will kill them instantly. And so Remus was so mad that he said, well, I'm going to jump the wall and see if it even works. So Romulus jumped the wall. And Remus jumped the wall. And Romulus killed him instantly for jumping his wall. And from that point on, Romulus decided that he was going to be the king. And he named his town Rome after himself. Romulus, Rome. He named it after himself. And that, boys and girls, is the story of the beginning of Rome. That is how Rome started. By 2 little boys that were put into the Tiber River and found by a wolf, and then later found by a shepherd, and grew up to build a city back where they were found of Rome. So we will keep on talking about this story as we go on. Please feel free to color the sheet, color the tree and the leaves and the wolf, the she-wolf, and we will talk more about this story later on. I hope you enjoyed the story, and I hope that you learned a little bit about the beginning of Rome. So
I will see you soon. Totus tuus, Maria.